Maria Gonzalez gripped her small, worn suitcase as she stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the towering Bellevue Grand Hotel. Sunlight bounced off its countless windows, making the building sparkle like something from another world, a world she had never been part of. "Are you sure this is right?" she whispered to herself, double-checking the confirmation letter she'd printed at the library. The paper was already creased from how many times she'd folded and unfolded it, reading the details over and over, hardly believing her luck. Just last week, Maria had been mopping the hallways at Pine Grove Elementary when the principal announced the winner of the community fundraiser raffle. When her name was called, all the teachers and students had cheered. Most of them knew Maria as the quiet janitor who always had a kind smile and occasionally slipped extra cookies to kids who looked hungry. Now here she was, about to spend a weekend in a place where one night cost more than her weekly salary. An uniformed doorman approached with a practiced smile. "May I help you, ma'am?" I have a reservation," Maria said, the words feeling strange in her mouth. The doorman's eyes flicked briefly to her faded blue dress and scuffed shoes before he gestured toward the entrance. "Of course, right this way." The lobby was like nothing Maria had ever seen outside of movies. The ceiling soared 3 stories high with a massive crystal chandelier hanging in the center. The floor was polished marble that reflected the light so clearly she could almost see her face in it. Leather couches and ornate tables were arranged in elegant groups where well-dressed people sat chatting quietly, their voices forming a gentle hum against the backdrop of soft piano music. Maria clutched her purse closer to her side and tried not to stare as she made her way to the reception desk. "Good afternoon," said a young woman with perfectly styled hair. Her name tag read Veronica. "How may I assist you today?" "I have a reservation," Maria repeated, handing over the letter. "From the charity raffle." Veronica's professional smile dimmed slightly as she took the paper. She typed something into her computer, then looked up with a raised eyebrow. "The presidential suite? Are you sure?" Heat crept into Maria's cheeks. "That's what the letter says. I won it in a raffle." Veronica glanced sideways at her colleague, who had stopped what he was doing to listen. They exchanged a look Maria had seen countless times before, the look people give when they think someone doesn't belong. "One moment, please," Veronica said, picking up a phone and turning slightly away. Maria stood awkwardly, aware of the stares from the other employees. She smoothed her dress, wishing she had something nicer to wear. The dress had been her mother's, saved for special occasions. Maria had spent an hour this morning pressing it with a borrowed iron, and now she worried the wrinkles were coming back from her bus ride to the city. After a hushed conversation, Veronica hung up the phone and returned her attention to Maria. "It appears everything is in order," she said, sounding surprised. "Thomas will show you to your suite." A young man in a crisp uniform appeared beside her, reaching for Maria's suitcase. "Oh, I can carry it," Maria said quickly. "I insist, ma'am," Thomas replied with practiced courtesy, though his eyes held the same questioning look as Veronica's. As they walked toward the elevator, Maria felt eyes following her. A couple in matching designer outfits openly stared as she passed. Maria heard the woman whisper something, followed by quiet laughter. The elevator was lined with mirrors and gold trim. Maria caught sight of her reflection, her graying hair pulled back in a simple bun, the worry lines around her eyes, the calloused hands that had scrubbed floors for 20 years. Standing next to Thomas in his pristine uniform, the contrast was stark. "First time at the Bellevue?" Thomas asked as they ascended. "First time in any hotel like this," Maria admitted. "I never thought I'd see the inside of a place so fancy." The elevator doors opened directly into a hallway with only 2 doors. "The presidential suite," Thomas announced, using a keycard to open the door on the right. Maria stepped inside and gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the city. The living room alone was bigger than her entire apartment. Fresh flowers stood on every surface, their fragrance filling the air. "Will there be anything else, ma'am?" Thomas asked, placing her suitcase next to a couch that probably cost more than her car. "No, thank you," Maria managed to say. As the door closed behind him, Maria stood motionless in the center of the room. Then slowly, a smile spread across her face. For one weekend, this palace was hers. Just wait until I tell Loop about this, she whispered, thinking of her daughter who was away at college on a hard-won scholarship. They had both worked so hard for so long. This unexpected luxury felt like a small reward for years of struggle. Maria kicked off her shoes and walked barefoot across the plush carpet, allowing herself, just this once, to feel like Cinderella at the ball. Maria woke to sunlight streaming through the massive windows of the presidential suite. For a moment, she forgot where she was, then smiled as she ran her hand over the silky sheets. She hadn't slept this well in years. After a quick shower in the marble bathroom, where she marveled at the rainfall showerhead and plush towels warmed on a heated rack, Maria put on her second-best outfit, a simple blue blouse and dark pants she usually saved for parent-teacher conferences. She hoped it would help her blend in better today. Her stomach growled as she made her way to the executive lounge for the complimentary breakfast mentioned in her welcome package. The hallway carpet silenced her footsteps as she followed the signs, her room key clutched tightly in her hand. The lounge doors were heavy glass with gold handles. Inside, well-dressed guests sat at tables covered with white cloths. A buffet lined one wall, offering foods Maria had only seen in magazines, exotic fruits arranged in artistic patterns, pastries dusted with gold, and chefs in tall white hats preparing omelets to order. Maria hesitated at the entrance, gathering her courage. A young hostess approached, clipboard in hand. "Good morning. May I see your room key, please?" Her tone was polite but cool. Maria handed over her key card. The hostess examined it, her eyebrows rising slightly. "The presidential suite. I see." She returned the card and gestured to the room. "Please sit anywhere. Someone will be with you shortly." Maria chose a small table near the window, away from the other guests. The view of the city was breathtaking from here. She could see the park where she sometimes ate lunch during her work breaks, now just a tiny patch of green far below. A waiter approached, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Coffee, ma'am?" "Yes, please," Maria replied. "And may I get something from the buffet?" "Of course," he said with a slight nod. At the buffet, Maria carefully selected a croissant, some fruit, and a small portion of scrambled eggs. She didn't recognize half the foods on display, but didn't want to draw attention by asking questions. As she served herself, she noticed a couple at a nearby table watching her, whispering behind their hands. Maria had just taken her first bite of the buttery croissant when a tall man in an expensive suit approached her table. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and a gold pin on his lapel identified him as Geoffrey Winters, hotel manager. "Excuse me, madam," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "May I see your room key?" Maria swallowed quickly and reached for her purse. "Yes, of course." She handed him the card, aware that conversations around them had stopped. Everyone was watching. Geoffrey examined the card with a frown. "How did you come to be staying in the presidential suite?" "I won it," Maria explained, her voice growing smaller as she noticed more people turning to stare. "In a charity raffle for the elementary school where I work." "As a teacher?" His tone suggested doubt. "No, I'm the janitor." The words hung in the air. Someone at a nearby table snickered. Geoffrey's face hardened. "I find that difficult to believe. This suite is typically reserved for diplomats and celebrities." He lowered his voice, though not enough to prevent others from hearing. "Not for people who clean floors." Heat rushed to Maria's cheeks. "I have my confirmation letter in my room. I can show you." "That won't be necessary," Geoffrey cut her off. "I believe there's been a serious error. People like you don't belong in establishments like this." The room had gone completely silent now. Maria felt every eye on her, judging, pitying, or simply curious at the unfolding drama. "Please finish your breakfast," Geoffrey continued, his voice dripping with false courtesy, "then return to your room. Someone from our staff will assist you with checkout procedures." He turned and strode away, taking her key card with him. Maria sat frozen, the food in front of her suddenly tasteless. She could hear the whispers starting again around her. "Did you hear that? A janitor. How did she even get in here? Those aren't designer clothes, that's for sure." With trembling hands, Maria placed her napkin beside her barely touched plate. She stood up, keeping her eyes down as she walked through the maze of tables toward the exit. Her face burned with humiliation, but she forced herself to walk slowly, back straight, determined not to run. In the hallway, away from prying eyes, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. Her weekend of luxury was over before it had really begun. When the elevator arrived, a young family stepped out, the children laughing. Maria stepped in, pressed the button for her floor, and watched the doors close on her dreams. Maria woke to sunlight streaming through the massive windows of the presidential suite. For a moment, she forgot where she was, then smiled as she ran her hand over the silky sheets. She hadn't slept this well in years. After a quick shower in the marble bathroom, where she marveled at the rainfall showerhead and plush towels warmed on a heated rack, Maria put on her second-best outfit, a simple blue blouse and dark pants she usually saved for parent-teacher conferences. She hoped it would help her blend in better today. Her stomach growled as she made her way to the executive lounge for the complimentary breakfast mentioned in her welcome package. The hallway carpet silenced her footsteps as she followed the signs, her room key clutched tightly in her hand. The lounge doors were heavy glass with gold handles. Inside, well-dressed guests sat at tables covered with white cloths. A buffet lined one wall, offering foods Maria had only seen in magazines, exotic fruits arranged in artistic patterns, pastries dusted with gold, and chefs in tall white hats preparing omelets to order. Maria hesitated at the entrance, gathering her courage. A young hostess approached, clipboard in hand. "Good morning. May I see your room key, please?" Her tone was polite but cool. Maria handed over her key card. The hostess examined it, her eyebrows rising slightly. "The presidential suite. I see." She returned the card and gestured to the room. "Please sit anywhere. Someone will be with you shortly." Maria chose a small table near the window, away from the other guests. The view of the city was breathtaking from here. She could see the park where she sometimes ate lunch during her work breaks, now just a tiny patch of green far below. A waiter approached, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Coffee, ma'am?" "Yes, please," Maria replied. "And may I get something from the buffet?" "Of course," he said with a slight nod. At the buffet, Maria carefully selected a croissant, some fruit, and a small portion of scrambled eggs. She didn't recognize half the foods on display, but didn't want to draw attention by asking questions. As she served herself, she noticed a couple at a nearby table watching her, whispering behind their hands. Maria had just taken her first bite of the buttery croissant when a tall man in an expensive suit approached her table. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and a gold pin on his lapel identified him as Geoffrey Winters, hotel manager. "Excuse me, madam," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "May I see your room key?" Maria swallowed quickly and reached for her purse. "Yes, of course." She handed him the card, aware that conversations around them had stopped. Everyone was watching. Geoffrey examined the card with a frown. "How did you come to be staying in the presidential suite?" "I won it," Maria explained, her voice growing smaller as she noticed more people turning to stare. "In a charity raffle for the elementary school where I work." "As a teacher?" His tone suggested doubt. "No, I'm the janitor." The words hung in the air. Someone at a nearby table snickered. Geoffrey's face hardened. "I find that difficult to believe. This suite is typically reserved for diplomats and celebrities." He lowered his voice, though not enough to prevent others from hearing. "Not for people who clean floors." Heat rushed to Maria's cheeks. "I have my confirmation letter in my room. I can show you." "That won't be necessary," Geoffrey cut her off. "I believe there's been a serious error. People like you don't belong in establishments like this." The room had gone completely silent now. Maria felt every eye on her, judging, pitying, or simply curious at the unfolding drama. "Please finish your breakfast," Geoffrey continued, his voice dripping with false courtesy, "then return to your room. Someone from our staff will assist you with checkout procedures." He turned and strode away, taking her key card with him. Maria sat frozen, the food in front of her suddenly tasteless. She could hear the whispers starting again around her. "Did you hear that?" "A janitor. How did she even get in here?" "Those aren't designer clothes, that's for sure." With trembling hands, Maria placed her napkin beside her barely touched plate. She stood up, keeping her eyes down as she walked through the maze of tables toward the exit. Her face burned with humiliation, but she forced herself to walk slowly, back straight, determined not to run. In the hallway, away from prying eyes, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. Her weekend of luxury was over before it had really begun. When the elevator arrived, a young family stepped out, the children laughing. Maria stepped in, pressed the button for her floor, and watched the doors close on her dreams. The school hallways were quiet as Maria pushed her cleaning cart past rows of colorful lockers. Most of the teachers had gone home, and only the distant sound of the basketball team practicing in the gym broke the silence. Maria liked these peaceful late afternoons when she could work without interruption, her mind free to wander and plan. A week had passed since the incident at the Bellevue Grand Hotel. Each time she remembered Geoffrey Winter's cold eyes and the whispers of the other guests, her determination grew stronger. She wasn't just angry for herself anymore. She was angry for everyone who had ever been made to feel less than human because of their job, their clothes, or how much money they had. Maria? Still here? Principal Chen approached from the administration office, keys jangling in her hand. Unlike most people, Mrs. Chen always treated Maria with respect. She made a point of learning about Maria's daughter Lupe and often asked for Maria's input on school matters. Just finishing up the science wing, Maria replied with a smile. "How was your meeting?" "Budget cuts again," Mrs. Chen sighed. "I don't know how they expect us to run a school with less money every year." She paused, studying Maria's face. "Is everything okay? You seem preoccupied lately." Maria hesitated. She rarely shared personal matters, but something about the principal's genuine concern made her want to talk. "I had a difficult experience last weekend," Maria said slowly. "At that hotel stay, I won in the raffle." Mrs. Chen frowned. "What happened?" As Maria described her humiliating ejection from the hotel, the principal's expression shifted from concern to outrage. "That's discrimination, plain and simple," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "You should file a complaint." "I'm planning something better than a complaint," Maria replied, a hint of steel in her voice. "But I need to ask you a favor." That evening, Maria sat at her computer, reviewing the data Mrs. Chen had provided, anonymous reports from parents, teachers, and staff who had experienced similar treatment at businesses throughout the city. Combined with her own research, the evidence was compelling. The discrimination wasn't just a one-time event, it was systematic. Maria opened her email and typed a familiar address, one she hadn't used in many years. 2. Anita.vega@globalnews.com. Subject: A story you might be interested in. Dear Anita, it's been a long time. 20 years, in fact. I doubt you remember your college roommate Mariana, the computer science major who was always stealing your coffee. I've been living under a different name for the past 2 decades. We should catch up sometime. I owe you quite a few cups of coffee by now. But that's not why I'm writing. I have a story for you. One that will shock a lot of people and might just change the way we talk about class and dignity in this country. Call me at the number below if you're interested. I promise it will be worth your time. Maria. She hit send before she could change her mind. Anita Vega had been Maria's best friend in college before they drifted apart. Maria disappearing into anonymity while Anita became one of the country's most respected investigative journalists. 3 minutes later, Maria's phone rang. "Mariana, is that really you?" Anita's voice was exactly as Maria remembered it, warm and full of energy. "I've been trying to find you for years. Where have you been?" "It's a long story," Maria said, smiling despite herself. "And I go by Maria now." "Maria. Okay." Anita paused. "Your email said you have a story for me." "Not just any story," Maria replied. "But before I tell you about it, I need your word that you'll protect my identity for now. I'm not ready for the world to know who I really am." "You have my word," Anita said without hesitation. "Now what's this all about?" Maria took a deep breath. "I've developed an algorithm that can identify patterns of discrimination in customer service interactions, and I've just experienced a textbook case myself." For the next hour, Maria explained everything: the hotel incident, her years of research, and the data she'd collected. As she spoke, she could hear Anita typing furiously on the other end. "This is dynamite," Anita said when Maria finished. "But we need proof beyond your algorithm. We need to catch them in the act. I have an idea about that, Maria said, her mind racing ahead to the next steps. How soon can you get a camera crew ready? As she hung up the phone, Maria felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, excitement, and something else: hope. After 20 years of hiding, she was about to step back into the light, not as the tech entrepreneur she once was, but as something new, a fighter for justice. She picked up a framed photo of her daughter Lupe, now studying engineering at college. "This one's for you, Mejia," she whispered. "For a world where no one gets to decide who belongs and who doesn't." Anita Vega stood outside the Bellevue Grand Hotel, microphone in hand, her Global News cameraman beside her. She wore a simple outfit, nothing that screamed famous journalist, and had styled her hair differently than she did on television. No one would recognize her, which was exactly the point. "Ready?" she asked her cameraman, who nodded and adjusted the hidden camera disguised as a button on his shirt. Inside her van parked across the street, Maria watched through a live stream on her laptop. 3 other team members, all people who had experienced similar discrimination and jumped at the chance to help with the investigation, were positioned throughout the hotel. Each wore hidden cameras and carried the same script: ordinary people asking for basic services at the luxury establishment. "Team check," Maria said into her headset. "Everyone in position." One by one, they confirmed they were ready. Weeks of preparation had led to this moment. "Remember," Maria told them, "this isn't about revenge. It's about evidence. We need to document exactly how they treat people based on appearance alone." Over the next 2 hours, Maria watched as the pattern unfolded exactly as her algorithm had predicted. Anita, dressed in department store clothes with no visible designer labels, was kept waiting for 20 minutes before being told there were no tables available at the hotel restaurant, despite Maria being able to see several empty tables through the livestream. Lewis, a factory worker who volunteered for the investigation, was followed by security when he sat in the lobby. When he asked to use the bathroom, he was directed to facilities in the basement, not the elegant ones on the main floor. Most telling was what happened to May, a retired teacher. She inquired about room rates while wearing a simple tracksuit and was quoted prices nearly double what was advertised online. When she mentioned the discrepancy, the desk clerk told her those rates were for preferred guests only. Throughout the day, Maria documented everything, correlating each interaction with the patterns her algorithm had identified. It wasn't just the Bellevue Grand. As her volunteers visited 5 other luxury hotels across the city, the same behaviors emerged. People judged by their clothes, their accents, the way they walked. By evening, they had hours of footage, and Maria's algorithm had calculated a 97.8% correlation between perceived wealth and quality of service. The discrimination wasn't subtle, it was blatant, consistent, and deeply ingrained. "This is even worse than I expected," Anita said when they regrouped in the news van. Her eyes shone with the fire that had made her such a respected journalist. "And you're saying your software can predict exactly who will be discriminated against?" Maria nodded. "And how?" "The patterns are consistent across different establishments. It's not random rudeness, it's systematic exclusion. But we still need the internal records to prove it conclusively," Anita pointed out. "Without that, the hotels will just claim these are isolated incidents." Maria smiled. "That's where Phase 2 comes in." Back in her apartment that night, Maria made a phone call she'd been planning for weeks. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed. This was the moment her carefully constructed private life might begin to unravel. "Human Resources, Bellevue Hotel Group," answered a cheerful voice. "Good evening," Maria said. "I'm calling about the IT security manager position advertised on your website." "Yes, we're still accepting applications. May I ask who's calling?" Maria took a deep breath. "This is Mariana Gonzalez Rivera." There was a pause, then a gasp of recognition. "The Mariana Gonzalez Rivera? The founder of Rivertech?" "The same," Maria confirmed. "I've been working in privacy and security algorithms since I sold my company. Your position caught my interest." Within minutes, she was transferred to the head of HR, then to the vice president of operations. By the end of the call, she had bypassed the entire interview process and been offered the job on the spot. The hotel group was practically begging her to join their team. As she hung up, Maria caught sight of her reflection in the window, still the same woman who had been thrown out of their hotel, but now about to walk through their front doors as an honored executive with access to every record in their system. Phase 2 complete, she whispered to herself, sending a quick text to Anita. Now for the real work. As Maria prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with messages from her volunteers, people who had felt powerless against a system designed to make them feel small. Their words of gratitude and hope filled her screen. Whatever happens next, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, something is already changing. On her first day as a security manager for the Bellevue Hotel Group, Maria arrived 30 minutes early. She wore a designer suit bought specially for this role, had hair styled professionally, and carried an expensive leather briefcase that contained nothing but her old lunch container and a photo of her daughter. The same security guard who had escorted her out of the hotel 3 weeks earlier now held the door open with a respectful nod. "Good morning, Ms. Gonzalez Rivera. We're honored to have you join our team," said the HR director, pumping her hand enthusiastically. "The CEO would like to meet you before your orientation." Maria was led through the back offices of the hotel, past busy staff who barely glanced at her. How different their treatment was now that she wore expensive clothes and carried an important title. The CEO's office was larger than Maria's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the city, and original artwork hung on the walls. Behind an enormous desk sat Robert Powell, who rose to greet her with a wide smile. "The famous Mariana Gonzalez Rivera. What an honor," he gushed, gesturing for her to sit in a leather chair across from him. "When they told me you had applied, I couldn't believe it. Why would someone of your stature want to work for a hotel chain?" Maria smiled politely. "I've always been interested in real-world applications of security algorithms. Hotels handle such sensitive customer data." "Well, we're thrilled to have you." "Absolutely thrilled." His eyes gleamed with the prospect of the publicity her hiring would bring. "Is there anything you need?" "Anything at all." "Actually," Maria said carefully, "I'd like full access to all systems from day one. I find it's the best way to spot vulnerabilities quickly." Powell didn't hesitate. Of course. I'll make sure it gives you whatever clearances you need." By lunchtime, Maria had a security badge that opened every door and computer access that reached the deepest levels of the hotel's systems. Within hours, she had downloaded exactly what she needed: 6 years of internal reports, customer complaint records, and most importantly, the VIP flagging system that rated guests based on their perceived importance. The data confirmed everything her algorithm had predicted. Guests were secretly categorized by appearance, spending habits, and occupation. Staff received bonuses for extra attention to high-rated guests, while complaints from low-rated guests were routinely dismissed. That night, Maria carefully copied the files onto an encrypted drive. As she worked, a notification popped up on her screen. Someone was accessing her personnel file. She traced the digital footprints to the office of Jeffrey Winters, the manager who had thrown her out. He was researching her background, probably trying to find ways to impress his new executive colleague. Maria allowed herself a small smile. By tomorrow, he would know exactly who she was. At precisely 9 a.m. the next morning, Maria walked into the main conference room, where the hotel's executive team had gathered for their weekly meeting. Heads turned as she entered, followed by Anita Vega and a global news camera crew. "Ms. Gonzalez Rivera, what is the meaning of this?" Powell sputtered, half rising from his chair. "I believe you all know Anita Vega from Global News," Maria said calmly. "She's here to cover a press conference I'm about to give in your lobby." Jeffrey Winters had gone pale, his eyes darting between Maria in her expensive suit and a photo on his phone, Maria in her simple dress from the day he humiliated her. "You," he whispered. "It can't be." "Yes, Mr. Winters. The janitor you threw out of breakfast." Maria's voice remained steady as she addressed the room. "I've spent the past 20 years living a quiet life under a different name. What happened to me here wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. It was part of a pattern of discrimination that exists throughout your hotels, a pattern I've now documented extensively." She placed the encrypted drive on the table. "This contains 6 years of your internal records showing systematic discrimination against guests based on appearance and perceived social status. Global News will be airing a special report tonight featuring this data, alongside hidden camera footage we've gathered from multiple locations. The executives looked stunned, some reaching frantically for their phones. Your stock price is about to take a significant hit, Maria continued. But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to offer you a choice. She pulled a second drive from her bag. This contains the framework for an anti-discrimination program I've developed. Implement it company-wide, and I'll work with you to repair the damage. Refuse, and I walk straight to that press conference, where I reveal not just what happened to me, but what's happened to hundreds of others. Powell looked from the drive to Maria's face, searching for a way out. Finding none, he slowly reached for the second drive. What do you want us to do? He asked quietly. Maria held his gaze. I want you to remember that every person who walks through your doors deserves dignity, regardless of what they wear, how they speak, or what job they do. Outside in the hallway, hotel staff had begun to gather, whispering among themselves as word spread about what was happening in the conference room. 1 year later, Maria stood in the gleaming lobby of the Bellevue Grand Hotel. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, catching on the new plaque mounted prominently near the entrance. Everyone belongs here. Below these words was the hotel's newly earned 5-star rating for inclusive service, the first certification of its kind in the country. Maria watched as guests of all backgrounds moved through the space, a grandmother in a handmade sweater checking in without a second glance from staff, a family in casual clothes being treated with the same courtesy as the businessman in an expensive suit. The changes weren't just for show. They ran deep. Ms. Gonzalez Rivera, a voice called. The new staff are ready for their training session. Maria turned to see May, the retired teacher who had helped with their investigation and who now served as the hotel's director of inclusive training. In the aftermath of Anita's explosive news report, which had been viewed over 30 million times online, the Bellevue Hotel Group had faced a choice: evolve or collapse. With their stock in free fall and cancellations pouring in, they had chosen to evolve. And they had asked Maria to lead the transformation. Thank you, May. I'll be right there, Maria replied, taking one last look around the lobby. The training room was filled with new employees from all backgrounds, people who would never have been hired under the old management. Maria had insisted that the hotel's workforce should reflect the diversity of their guests. At the back of the room, she spotted a familiar face, Jeffrey Winters, who had been demoted but not fired, at Maria's insistence. Real change, she believed, came not from punishment, but from learning and growth. Good morning, everyone, Maria began. Today we're going to talk about what true luxury means. It isn't about marble floors or fancy furniture. It's about how you make people feel when they walk through our doors. As she spoke, Maria thought about how much had changed in a year. The Everyone Belongs certification program she had developed was now being implemented in hotels across the country. Her algorithm, refined and expanded, had become a powerful tool for businesses seeking to identify and eliminate unconscious bias. After the session, Maria walked through the hotel's back corridors where the staff worked, areas usually hidden from guests. She had redesigned these spaces too, ensuring that the people who cleaned rooms and washed dishes had comfortable break areas and were treated with the same respect as front desk staff. In the employee cafeteria, she sat with a group of housekeepers, listening to their stories and suggestions. This was part of her weekly routine now, gathering feedback from every level of the organization. My daughter wouldn't believe this, said one of the older housekeepers, Rosa. 20 years working in hotels, and I never sat down for lunch with a boss before you came. I'm not really your boss, Maria reminded her. I'm a consultant. Rosa shook her head. You're the owner in all but name. Everyone knows that. It was true in a way. After the scandal, when the hotel chain's reputation and stock price had plummeted, Maria had quietly purchased a controlling interest through a series of investment funds. She hadn't wanted to. Her plan had been to return to her quiet life once the changes were implemented, but she had realized that true transformation needed constant vigilance. Later that afternoon, Maria was reviewing new applicants for the management training program when a knock came at her office door. Come in, she called. A young woman entered, looking nervous but determined. Maria recognized her immediately. Lupe, her daughter, home from college for spring break. Mom, Luke said, closing the door behind her. I know you wanted me to focus on engineering, but I've been thinking. She placed a folder on Maria's desk. I have some ideas for expanding the inclusivity program to restaurants and retail stores. I want to join the company after graduation. Maria opened the folder to find detailed plans and research, the same methodical approach she had always used herself. Pride swelled in her chest. When did you figure it out? Maria asked. That I was more than just a school janitor. Lute smiled. I've known since I was 12 and found your hidden room. But I never said anything because I could see you were happy. You were doing important work, just not the way everyone expected. Maria stood and hugged her daughter tightly. You're right. And now we're going to do important work together. As they looked out the window at the city below, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her here, from tech pioneer to janitor to activist. The path hadn't been straight or simple, but standing here with her daughter, seeing the changes already taking root, she knew she wouldn't change a single step. Sometimes the greatest transformations began with the smallest moments of injustice. And sometimes being thrown out was just the beginning of finding your way back in, this time through the front door, head held high, changing everything as you went.